What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the ARC Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Zachary. If you're new tuning in, thank you for joining. This is the Athletes Resilience Center podcast, where we talk all things mental performance in sports. We have an awesome episode for you this week. We have a really powerful conversation about resilience, identity, and rebuilding when the future you thought you had ultimately disappears. We have on special guest Jacob Lowe, who shares his journey from being a Stanford football walk-on to traveling with the team as a backup long snapper, staying ready for pressure moments on the big stages and getting in big-time games, facing a series of injuries that ultimately ended his playing career. And we go into his football career ending and what came next. We dove deep into the mental toll of the injuries, the identity crisis that he faces when the sport was ripped away. We talked about how Jacob learned to take 100% responsibility, be able to detach from outcomes, and rebuild his confidence through process, routine, and his intentional actions. We also explore practical tools athletes use right now, from thought audits and reframing limiting beliefs to routines, go songs, and navigating social media with a purpose instead of comparison. This is an awesome episode. I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you so much for taking the time to come join us today and have the conversation and share your journey and kind of what you're up to today. How are you doing tonight?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on. So I'm excited to share my story and share some wisdom of my journey and what I'm doing now. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about myself and how I can impact others.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I mean, you and I we're talking over social media DMs and kind of going through your story and journey, man. I'm really excited to get into it. And just like every other episode, I'll put the ball back in your court. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and explain how you got to where you are today.
Cool. All right. So I was born and raised in Central Florida. High school, I graduated in 2022. I thought I was under recruited for playing at Stanford. It would happen my sophomore, junior year. So kind of complicated things and slowed recruiting down. Ended up walking on at Stanford as a fullback. In that spring semester of my senior year of high school, I was a weightlifting champion, state champion
Okay.
actually,
Yeah.
which I'd never talk about. I think it's really cool, and it's like my best
Yeah, that's
athletic
awesome.
accomplishment, I
Yeah,
guess,
that's
in a
great.
way. Flew out to Stanford, I'm like, "Oh, like, I can actually play football," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To an extent, right? And so as time went on, I started turning a lot of eyeballs, and the position coach, while he took me seriously beforehand, started taking me a lot more seriously, which was awesome, and I started to grow a great relationship with him. The backup long snapper got hurt. He had foot surgery for a broken cuboid, and so I replaced him because I was the only other guy who could long snap. And so my freshman year, I was a backup long snapper. I traveled all 12 games, went to Notre Dame, Oregon, Washington, the Rose Bowl, Utah. Went to some great places and played some great football. Made my first appearance in the big game, Stanford versus California, and in the fourth quarter. That's a very interesting experience, and I want to talk about that a little bit because preparation and staying ready is key as an athlete, especially at that level. And I made my appearance with like 9 minutes left in the game because of an injury. So, 3 hours between warming up and that point was nuts, but we'll come back to that. At that point, the next week I started in BYU in the season finale. What ended up being my last play of my career had a bad snap, had a high snap on a short snap. And I remember looking up at the scoreboard, I'm like, is this it? And it just gave me this weird feeling that would ended up being true. Right. And I'll talk about that a lot. Spring comes around. I got moved back to running back. Coach Shaw resigned. And then I took a hit in a non-contact practice that ultimately would end my career. I suffered a concussion. 2 months later, I fell to a tonic-clonic seizure at a hotel in Redwood City, California. And that was tough because waking up from that moment, and it sends chills in my body every time. But I woke up from that moment and just, I knew everything was gone. Everything was done. Like Stanford was my dream. It was just stolen from me. And it's tough to face that reality, especially when it's completely out of control. Right. And so came home, was just lost. I mean, lost everything I'd ever worked for, couldn't drive for 6 months, couldn't work hard. I had a back surgery a month after I came home. Life was rough.
Yeah.
And when hit the portal at the end of 23, Florida State, UCF, they were hot, but it's like, dude, you're too beat up,
Yeah.
right? We can't
Yeah.
take you. It doesn't make sense. Even as a walk-on, I was like, wow. Talked to FIU, visited. They were like, if you want, but it's not going to look great because of your health. And I'm like, okay. Ended up visiting Stetson, committed on a Friday. That Monday, the following Monday, they pulled my offer after I committed. And so I spent the spring 24 semester there. I still explored options. I still reached out to coaches. I was training really hard. I got into really good shape. I ran a 4.46 40 at like
Yeah.
235. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I was moving. I was
Yeah.
becoming an elite athlete. So I'm like, I got to give it a shot. I mean, but I had nothing to prove, which honestly was attributed to a lot of my success because there's no pressure. Also, we should talk about that as well. Ended up committing to a D2. I like the head coach a lot. I like the coaching staff a lot. They were just their mentality was a blue collar mentality. And I really bought into that at St. Anselm College in Manchester, New Hampshire. The second week of camp, I started getting a weird feeling like my left leg wouldn't recover. And with, the first back surgery being a lumbar back surgery, I'm like, okay, like slow it down. And me being me, I was like, I can't slow down. Like it was very hard for me to go to the trainer and just say, I'm not practicing today. Right. But at some point I stood up for myself and my health and I'm like, I'm just not doing it. And they were like, with my health situation, they're like, we don't care.
Yeah.
They were
Right.
like, please.
Yeah.
Most kids, they would have been like, go practice, but they were like, take care of yourself. Ended up getting an MRI, second extruded disc in the lower back. I said, I'm done. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move. I couldn't sleep. The last thing on my mind was football. And so I spent last fall in 2024 up there in New Hampshire, didn't get to play a game, just missed the first game, just in pain, agony, anger, a lot of things. I didn't have any support, to be honest with you. Like just, being a new kid, being from far away, I wouldn't have supported that kid either, right? Especially a kid coming in from a big school, who thinks he's all that, right? Or at least you think that about
Yeah.
him, right? And so, I come home in January, have another back surgery to start this year. What a way to kick off a year. And I was on a walk 2 weeks later with my dad, and we were coming back home because I'd started walking. They want you moving with the type of surgery I had. So I was moving a lot, just starting a weight loss journey. Cool. And I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, I have no motivation. I have no drive. I have no nothing. He goes, well, you could just be a deadbeat. And I'm like, no shot. I'm ever letting those words come out of his mouth ever again. And from there, it sparked the fire inside of me. That fire has burned brighter than ever before, even before Stanford, at Stanford, like ever, which is really cool to be honest with you. So
Yeah.
I met a guy over Instagram, Nick Sweeney, who I now work with, and he did performance coaching for executives, for high level athletes, for injured athletes. So I got in touch with him. I liked a lot of his free content. I took a lot away from it. So I worked with him eventually. I'm back in March, and just ever since, life's been just quantum leap after quantum leap after quantum leap. And so I feel really aligned now doing the work I'm doing, and a lot of it's effortless, a lot of it's frictionless, and I'm trying to translate that into athletes, right? And
Yeah.
having them become their own authentic self, chase their dreams, right? And teach them how to handle failure, right? And teach them how to grow in a way where there's no pressure, there's no anxiety, there's no failure because they're the creator of their life. They're in control. So I think it's a good place to wrap it up with my story. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing. I mean, you have such a unique journey, and obviously, you work with Langston and have hung out with him and, have gone on this journey together, which is also awesome, who was just on the pod as well. But I'd love to take it all the way back to, you talked about going into Stanford, being a walk-on, and kind of going through that journey. I'd love to hear from your perspective. When you were in high school, was the thought process for you like play pro football? Was that the goal? Was that the aspiration? Or was it, let's just get on campus and see what happens? Like, where was your mindset at, I guess, going into college, like for your long-term goals?
Yeah. If you knew anybody that knew me around 17, 18, 19 years old, like everybody would say like he did not want to play professional football,
Okay.
even if I
Yeah.
had the opportunity, because I mean, average career is 3 years.
Right.
It's hard on the body. I mean, you see what college football did to me, right? Can't imagine the
Yeah.
NFL.
Right.
And unless I had just made an incredible transformation, which I probably could have, to be honest with you. I mean, I did even after an injury, but it wasn't my mission. It wasn't my purpose, right? Like I have a jersey hanging back there. Like that's all, like that's cool, right? That's cool enough for me. Would I have done it? Yeah, of course. Right. But my goal was to set myself up for success. Right. And that's why I played at a school like Stanford, because I mean, I'll have to explain, right?
Yeah, of course.
But that was the reason, was like use football to get to Stanford, right? I wouldn't have gotten to Stanford without my academics, and I wouldn't have gotten to Stanford without football, right? I needed both of them to get there.
Yeah. No, okay. I think that's really unique because I think a lot of people we've had on the podcast when they go through a journey like that, especially playing at such an elite level like Stanford, right? Like playing at such a high-end D1 football school. Like you do hear a lot of those guys say the aspiration obviously is to play after college and play pro ball and that's the goal. And I think it's really unique to you that you say like you acknowledged from a young age that I guess that wasn't your purpose, right? That's not what you wanted. Where I think a lot of kids don't have that same maybe self-awareness, right? They think football is them. That's their identity and that's it. Like there's nothing beyond them besides that sport, which I think is really unique to you and really cool. So I know obviously I don't want to jump ahead all the way to what you're doing now, but I'd love to hear like during that time period, I know obviously, the injuries kind of derailed your career and then you ended up having to hang it up due to that. But did this self-awareness that you had earlier, like within high school, make that transformation post playing a little bit easier? Or was that not even a thought in your head? I'm just going through kind of your steps and
Yeah,
thinking about maybe, you seemed pretty self-aware early on.
I was, I'll be honest. Was a very level-headed kid. I still am. I mean, I'm very much on my path, straight line. Um, you know, After the game, I was in so much pain with the back. That's
Yeah.
all was on my mind.
Yeah.
And it's tough for me to say like I cared about football this much or I cared about the transformation after.
Yeah.
I was in just
Right.
so much pain. That's all I was worried about
Yeah.
was like, how can I get rid of it?
Right.
Caffeine, alcohol, sleep, doing things I wasn't supposed to be doing. I mean, that was the focus. So, like, when I lost football, I was like, "I don't even care." That's where
Yeah.
my life was at. That's how much pain I was in. So it's tough for me to say, like, the self-awareness definitely helped, but, I think I'm driven a little bit differently than the average person. My core concern right now is chasing my purpose even at 23 years old, and it was at
Right.
17. So, I think that definitely helped a lot in finding my identity early on and just accepting, like, pro football wasn't a dream of mine.
Yeah.
And to have it be a dream of mine because others thought it should have been a dream of mine just wasn't something I did, I mean, people would always make the comment to me, I'd be like, "Eh, cool," right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not why I'm going to Stanford, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, and I mean, Stanford is also an amazing academic school, right? Like, that's just an honor to be able to get into the school and go to the school and be a student. So, I'd love to hear now from your perspective when you got on campus, were there a lot of people that were like-minded with you in that situation? Because, I will say Stanford, probably above some of these other universities that you see out there at the high D1 level, not every kid is there to try and play professional football. And a lot of them probably have a better understanding of what their route might become because of how high academic the school is. Were there a lot of like-minded teammates that you had while you were at Stanford, or did you feel like you were one of the only ones that was like, I'm not going to try to do this, pursue this after college?
I mean, I'd say just about everybody, if not everybody,
Yeah.
was certainly like degree.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
we still had a very talented roster. I think my year I was there, we were the 3rd most talented roster according to, like, 247. So we
Yeah.
had guys, like,
Yeah.
they're out there. The 4 5 stars,
Yeah.
3 and 4, I don't think we had to find any 5 stars, but the 3 and 4 stars that are smart, they're out there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Stanford gets them, and they still do. It's just the face I know they're not that good right now. I know they haven't had a winning season since COVID, but they
Yeah.
still get them. They still get the
Right.
talent. And so, a couple of the guys would always say, like, "You're one of the smarter guys in the class." I'm like, "Cool," right? But we're all here for the same reason, right? Like, everybody gets the degree. Not a lot of guys, even with today's culture and today's world, transfer out,
Yeah.
right? So, a lot of like-minded individuals there, which was nice because I was around guys that always wanted to get better,
Right.
guys that are all better than me.
Yeah.
So, dang.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. I can only imagine. I went to a school that was obviously we were at the D3 level, so not comparable athletic wise, but again, I was around a lot of people that were aware very early on that, hey, I'm going to pursue something else besides this sport. I felt like that did lead to a lot of, self-awareness and a lot of people embracing that identity earlier on rather than just being a baseball player, which, I think can be definitely beneficial and helpful. And I'm sure that happened at Stanford. But my next question, kind of staying at the Stanford level right now, right? Like, what are some of the takeaways that you found from that coaching staff and from the people that were there kind of coaching you and helping you coach? And maybe what are some of the things that you learned while you were at Stanford that you might incorporate today when you're utilizing coaching and working with clients?
What would I take away from I'll answer the first question and then I'll circle back to the second one. What would I take away from the first coaching staff? My position coach when I changed to long snapper, Coach Alomar, Pete Alomar, he's in his 60s or 70s. I don't know for sure. Fire.
Yeah.
Coach with the fire, coaches with the passion, attention to details, doesn't accept excuses, blame, right? That's the first thing. It's like there's no room at that level, and there should never be room if you want to play at that level for excuses, for that kind of negative energy, right? It's a waste of time. Get
Yeah.
you nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, where can I direct that energy elsewhere? And I wish I knew that because when I made the transition from fullback to long snapper, I wasn't a D1 long snapper then. So
Right.
there were
Right.
practices where I'd have no good snaps,
Yeah.
ball over the punter's head, ball at the knees. There were practices where if we did a drill called half line, and you would take like one half or half of the offensive line when you do field goal, right? So like 7 guys, holder, kicker. There were days where every single one of my balls got blocked.
Yeah.
Because my snaps weren't good enough.
Yeah.
And so being in that culture, being in that environment of you're going to make it or you're not going to play, you rise to that level, right? And then what was the second question with
The
that?
second question were, being there and being under the coaching staff and kind of learning while you were there. What are some of the things you might take away from that and utilize in your own coaching and when you work with athletes today?
Yeah. On top of what I just said, I'll add how you do one thing is how you do everything. In the spring, I'd made huge improvements in my game. In that 2023 spring before I got hurt. I got a lot faster. I got a lot more technical with the details. But one thing, if I could go back and change that I didn't do, and this might be funny, is my locker was messy. I was the only guy in the locker room who had a messy locker, right? Clothes all over the place, like nothing was organized because I didn't care about the details. And it showed. Like when we had certain practices, I wouldn't know certain things and I wouldn't be attentive to some details, which for me now, me saying that's like, whoa, really? Jacob out of all people, right? But attention to detail, because how you do
Yeah.
one thing is how you do everything, right?
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think looking back on my college career, I could say the same thing about my locker. I think at times it definitely, reflected maybe where my mindset was at the time. Maybe when I was a little bit more in my head or flustered or dealing with something mentally, my locker probably showed that as well. They say that, about your working space, about everything. If thing gets clustered, like that's just a reflection of what your mind's looking like. So I totally understand that and vibe with that. Now, let's take a jump into your next journey, right? So, post playing, you had this conversation with your father, you said, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to jump right into this. I guess with after that conversation, what was kind of your first step in what you wanted to do, right? Like you talked about, you reached out to Nick Sweeney, who you said you work with and have kind of, took a passion into the way that he uses performance coaching and works with executives and athletes. Like, what was your first step after you said that fire was lit within you? Like, what did you do? What was the first thing that you did?
What's funny is like I started intermittent fasting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Okay.
clarity I had was insane. And I was
Yeah.
like, this is the first time I've really been like this clear and been able to think.
Yeah.
It's like that I'd say that helped, right?
Yeah.
I read a book. I have it underneath a bunch of other books here. The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And
Okay.
any athlete is transitioning out of their career, like this is what I would give them first. Like get past the game and get into this book, right? It's incredible. And the first principle there is take responsibility for 100% of everything in your life. And I started doing that everywhere. Grades, even though I always had good grades, but I did even more details, and then learning with Nick. But what really got me into coaching was like on the phone, I told him that story and he's like, why don't you do this? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, why don't you coach athletes on the mental side of the game? And I'm like, you're kind of right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, it's interesting. And then when I got that support from him, that I guess not permission, but like reassurance that I could do it, that's when I attacked it. And I just started learning, reading a ton, listening to podcasts. Working with Nick was the most important thing. Like you can listen to all the podcasts in the world, read all the books in the world, but you want to get it straight from the mouth, right? You want that information, right? You want that 10,000 hours. And that's what he had, right? And then from there, it's just been ascension. And then to talk about the business journey a little bit, like I worked with a couple former athletes from St. Anselm. I'm like, I want to try some things with you guys. Then I reached out to Langston. He talked about that a little bit in the podcast. And we would do certain things, and he's like, it lit a fire inside of him as well to get back into what he was doing in his journey. If you guys didn't listen to that podcast, I highly recommend to listen to it. Langston is an incredible friend of mine, but also a great business partner and coach as well. And then we started working with athletes. I actually worked with one of the athletes he trained, which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Side of the game. So we split that. got a couple other families, work 2-on-1 with athletes, and then we hired the business coach, and then from there, it's just ascended. So it's been a great journey, and
Yeah.
I would trade the world for anything this year.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I do love hearing that. Langston did give you your flowers as well on his podcast episode. And again, like you said, shameless plug, go back and watch that episode because that was definitely a good one as well. But now I'd love for you to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the business and working with Langston, because Langston kind of gave a little sneak peek behind the curtains about the pillars that you guys have, your foundation of what you're trying to do. I'd love you to kind of go into it from your perspective a little bit and kind of give the viewers and listeners a little bit of a deeper dive into what you are actually doing and what your, I guess, mission and values are, along with like how you're making your impact.
Yeah. So it's awesome as I shot my new video sales letter today. And so I
Yeah.
talk about like exactly what I call now the law of the compounded athlete, which is just a
Yeah.
fancy name for our program, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's 5 pillars to it. First is identity, or it could be vision. It depends on how you see it. But it's like, what are your deepest desires? What are the thoughts, beliefs, and actions you need to have to get there? How can we line that up with your identity? And then we'll give you the breath work, the meditation, and the visualization to go from there. It sounds a lot simpler than it is,
Yeah.
but everything starts in the mind. Sometimes I go back and forth with myself with the philosophy of like, is action more important or is the mindset more important? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of kids out there that talk a good talk, have the good mindset, and don't do anything about it. But when I'm in my highest state, when I'm in my highest frequency, when I'm in my highest energy, my thoughts are being filtered, they're being audited constantly, right? And I'm not letting certain thoughts go through my mind, and if they do, I'm reframing them and pitching them out. So that gives you a little bit of a glimpse on how we take an athlete from A to B.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And yeah, Langston kind of gave a little bit of a dive into that as well. And I'd love to hear because I asked him a similar question. And obviously your journey is even much different from his journey and, obviously much different than a lot of people's journeys. But I don't know if you've thought of this specifically, but what are some of the things that maybe happened to you as an athlete or some of the things that you went through mentally for yourself that you now incorporate and try to help with the athletes that you're working with? Like, I understand obviously you went over the injuries, but specifically maybe some of the mental blocks that you might have went through, like how do you think that helps you coach today and what does that do to like the way that you attack coaching every day?
What's funny is like I've never heard Langston's story like that much in depth, and we're very
Yeah.
similar in a lot of
Yeah.
things. And then Nick
Right.
as well, he also had nearly a near career-ending injury, I guess if you want to call it. He had a ball of scar tissue so bad on his foot, the doctor was like, "You'll never walk again." And then he used the power of breathwork to heal, and then race in the Olympic trials. So like, it's cool how we've all faced adversity and grown through it. But in terms of like my experience and then getting through some mental blocks, I understand where these athletes are coming from. I understand the pressure and then all the sources of the pressure themselves, parents, coaches, teammates, dealing with failure, how other people see you, how your classmates see you, right? And then handling that failure. Nick, when I produce content now, Nick advised me to do this because Nick has like 280,000 followers on
Yeah.
Instagram. And then before, I think earlier this year, like 20,000. So his
Yeah.
growth is unparalleled. But one of
Yeah.
the biggest things he does is he talks to the version of himself about 5 years ago or in his toughest
Mhm.
spot. And that's what I try to do is I try to talk to that version of Jake. What did Jake need to hear? Right.
Right.
5 years ago as a junior when he had a really bad game, what did he need to hear in order
Yeah.
to grow from it? Right. And make a huge leap. And that's what I tried to do is like take my worst experiences. And it's almost like selfish of me, especially with what I do now. It's almost selfish of me not to talk to that version of Jake and try to impact an athlete's life, right? Because they can make more growth. They can become a whole new person because of my experience, right? That's really my goal at the end of the day is to impact athletes on that level, right?
Yeah. No, I don't think I've ever heard it put that way. I think that's very eloquently put, is speaking to the version of yourself that needed it most, or you, like you said, 5 years ago. Like, that's a really cool perspective to have. And I think it shows in a lot of your videos and the way that you speak and communicate. It's like a true passion and a true understanding of the value and weight that your words are holding when you are having those conversations. So, no, I do love that. And I think that's something anyone can kind of implement if they're, trying to help athletes and serve their purpose, right? Like, I think that's amazing. But continuing in with like your coaching style and your approach, we just kind of talked about your experiences and how that's bled over into what you do. You have like an understanding for what these athletes are going through, because again, like you just said, you recently just went through a lot of that, and your journey and your growth kind of has shown that. And the way that you've also grown on the business side and the coaching side is through social media. And I know you're very prevalent on social media, Instagram and YouTube. And a topic that I talked about with Langston as well is, social media does have a positive side and it does have a negative side, right? Like there's obviously two sides to the coin, as in there's a lot of things that are the same way. But how would you kind of navigate going over with an athlete, like how to utilize social media? Because again, I think there is valuable content like you guys are producing and giving out. I'd like to think some of the content we're producing is also some valuable content, athletes can take away and learn from and educate themselves on. But then there's also a lot of content that might not be so much, or is a little bit more clickbaity, or is a little bit this or that. Like, I guess, what kind of advice do you give to athletes that you're working with on how to utilize social media and like what you should be looking for in a sense?
What's funny is last night I held a class for Athlete Creator Lab and helping athletes destroy mental blocks when it comes to posting content.
Okay. Yeah.
So do you want to talk about posting or consuming or both?
Both. I think that'd be great. This is perfect. Yeah.
So posting, what I told them was like, clarity kills procrastination. Why are you posting content in the first place? Are you doing it because your teammates are doing it? Are you doing it because you want to fit in? Or are you doing it for a reason? Are you doing it for an impact? Are you doing it for the money? If you're doing it for the money, it's fine. Right?
Yeah.
Like there's no shame in that, right?
Right.
We all got to pay rent. We all have to eat, right? And so figure out your why. It's like the most important thing. I would tell the athlete the same thing. Like, why are you playing football, Jake? Like, why? And I knew, right? But it helps you because it helps you break through those limiting beliefs, those challenges, and helps you grow, right? Because it gives you a reason to push through it, not just to do it, right? On the consuming side, since Nick and I are working together, we have group calls for our Polaris professionals on Wednesday. And we did a challenge where you couldn't consume anything for a week outside of like food and water and conversations with anybody. No reading, no scrolling, no music, no podcast, no nothing. And I was so creative. I produced so much content, schoolwork, like everything. And so the easy answer for me is just don't scroll to begin with.
Yeah.
It's not good for you. I mean, we all know that. But, in 3 videos, you could feel 3 very radical emotions, right? You could go from extremely angry to extremely sad to extremely happy, right? And you're training your mind to react harshly and quickly and often to certain things. Outside of that, like, don't follow people for fun. Don't feel like you have to follow people. I would say make your 4-page fun, creative, educational. It's hard to do it, right?
Yeah.
And then, include some fun stuff here and there, right? Send those memes to your friends and get them back, right? But certainly like limit scrolling. And it's tough for a lot of kids. I was in class a month ago and this girl, we were talking about social media. She's like, I've been on TikTok all day. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
For 10 hours, it's insane. So do not get into that habit, kids.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. And I like the idea of kind of like a content fast. I do like that idea because, no, I mean, listen, we're all guilty of it. You can get sucked into a wormhole of scrolling and you're like, what did I even just watch? I gained nothing from that 15-minute venture just scrolling on my phone. So no, I totally get that and love that. And again, I think too, content posting, like you said, kind of figuring out what your why is behind it. Like, why am I posting? Am I posting it to impress people? Am I posting it because someone else did it? Like, there's a lot of reasons that you might be posting something, but does it align with your why, right? Like, if I want to be the best, in my case, baseball player I could be, if you want to be the best football player that you could be, is this a post that's, helping that? Or is this just a post I'm posting because I'm like, I want to look cool? You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be different levels of why. And I think that kind of goes back to, I think you posted a video on this on social media, is like finding your why. I'd love you to go over like the importance of an athlete or even just a person finding their why and why that's important for like everything that they do, not just posting on social media.
We'll talk about it 2 ways. I'll start with the business first. I had $6,000 to my name in August. And when we hired the business coach, she was $10,000. And I got onto the call. I'm like, I'm just going to do whatever feels right. I know what my purpose is. I know what it is right now. I know what my passion is, right? It's to help athletes like I was. And so I got on the call and he's like, basically a minute in, he goes, yeah, I just fired my whole team. I sat there like, what?
Yeah.
Taking a sales call in 2 years. He had a closer for him. And he's like, yeah, I just fired my whole team. It's my first sales call in 2 years. I'm like, this is it. It's got to be it. It feels right. It felt good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it was $10,000. It was a lot of money. I mean, for me at the time. I went with it, went right in the hole. I called Nick after. I told him what I did. I had a job with him. And so having your why is so important because it allowed me to take that leap of faith to go $4,000 in the hole. It's something I've never been in debt. For an athlete, playing at Stanford was my dream, was my why, right? Like Stanford was my dream school pretty much from the start. I can't remember when it wasn't. So, I mean, that motivated me to do everything I did around football, train, sleep, stretch when I didn't want to, motivated me to do anything and everything. I mean, I was rarely a kid you ever had to tell him what to do. Rarely. So it's important to have that why because I read this in the E-Myth yesterday, which is great if you're a young entrepreneur. Teach me a lot about systems and implementation. It's like if you don't have an aim, your life will drift. Can't remember exactly how he said it, but it's true. It's like if you get in a car with no destination, you're just going to drive all over the place instead of just having that vision and then reverse engineering it from there.
Right. We had a guest on the podcast a while back, and he talked about doing a self-audit. And I feel like that's important when you kind of find your why and understand why you do things, because this self-audit that you have, you can look and reflect at the end of the week and be like, okay, this is my why. This is the things that I want to accomplish. This is the why behind it. Now I can self-audit and be like, okay, let's look at all the things that I accomplished or did. Does that align with my why at the end of the week? And then you can kind of trim the fat from there or understand, all right, I need to add a little bit more time into different things. Like, I kind of love that idea of always coming back to your why and understanding, okay, like you said, it allowed you to be able to take the leap of faith to go in this next journey in your life because you were like, this is my calling. This is everything to me. So I'm able to do that. And this is, what's in my best interest to grow as a human.
Self-audit, I like that. One of the top things I teach athletes, and this is one of the first things I ever taught coaching was a thought audit.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, what are your top 5 most dominant thoughts right now? And then what's not serving you, what's scarce, what's negative, and how can we reframe that? Right. And so, like, for example, let's go through it right now. Let's just say I took them through this last night on the calls, like, I can't post good content, right? I would have them cross that out, kill it, tell your subconscious, tell your nervous system, it no longer serves you. And then the affirmation, affirmations are, I'm back and forth on affirmations, but I do affirm here. It's like, I can produce good content. And then the third one is the action, right? I can make good content because of X, Y, and Z, because I'm going to learn and then I'm going to apply. Right? It's like we're killing a limiting belief with action.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like one of my most important things. I do it all the time, every day. As soon as a negative thought comes out, I get it on paper, I get it in my journal. And I'm like, why is this here? And now it's not serving me. Get out of it. Get out of here. You don't serve me.
We want to take a quick second to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by the Philly Pretzel Factory of Marlton, New Jersey. Whether it's picking up a snack between games or picking up a party tray for the big game, the Philly Pretzel Factory of Marlton has you covered. For all of your pretzel needs, make sure you stop by the Philly Pretzel Factory of Marlton, located on North Maple Ave. Let them know that the ARC podcast sent you. Now back to the episode.
Now, I love that idea of crushing a limiting belief with an action. Like, there is no better way to crush one than to prove to yourself. That's incorrect. That statement is wrong. And I love being able to do that. That's great. That's something I think I want to implement. That's great. I do love that. So again, now continuing kind of with your coaching and growing the business, I would love to hear kind of like what that has looked like on that end of growing. And the other thing that I always get interested in with people who jump into a business or jump into this new work life post-playing career, it'll be a two-parter again, kind of going into like the structure of how the business has been built and how you've been able to grow. And then the second part of it is, do you think your time as an athlete has really helped you be able to kind of take all of this head on and really dedicate yourself to growing this and making the business that you want it to become?
Time as an athlete, how it translated to an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Essentially. I recorded a video about 2 months ago talking about this. So love to link it in the description. But structure and growth of the business. I mean, when I started out, all I wanted to do was like teach what I had. That's why I went to Langston, because I'm like, Langston's going to understand this. Langston speaks this lingo. Langston is a driven, right? Has a very strong intrinsic value and strong work ethic. So I'm like, Langston. And the other two guys I went to were very similar. And so from there, I was like, I can do this. And I didn't know it was going to be for current athletes. But then when I worked with AJ Atkin, as a baseball player here in Central Florida, I was like, I can do this. And the results we got were insane because I taught him the power of visualization, but I never taught visualization to an athlete. And so when we did it, it was like, whoa, I can do this. So from there, until I hired Jeremy, the business coach, it was just all over the place. I tried to run a follower ad in August and I gained like 1,000 or 2,000 followers, but it's just all over the place. I had no structure.
Yeah.
I had no, like nothing, no funnel set up, like no plan. And it just shows like when you open a business, you have to be able to, again, this book, The E-Myth, is really good. You should be able to hand it to somebody else and they should be able to run it very similar and produce the exact same results. And that's what I'm working on right now is like producing that back end of the program and then making sure it's very clear on what we offer, what we do, right? And so if I ever like say Langston, I'm like, Langston, can you please take over right now? He'd be
Yeah.
able to do it seamlessly and
Right.
hopefully better than me, right?
Right.
So structure is very key when it comes to a business. And it's the same thing as an athlete. Have your why, have your long-term goal, have that ultimate dream desire and work it backwards, right? Like there was a reason I played at Stanford. The higher power decided, God decided that you're going to play there. But did it end
Right.
up the way I thought? No. I thought I was going to walk across that stage with a nice degree that said Stanford University, and it didn't happen. But it happened for a reason. So chasing your dreams, chasing what's deep down in your heart is very key. And then just detaching from the outcome, which is very interesting and a very interesting topic to talk about because you don't
Yeah.
just detach by detaching,
Right.
right? My time as an athlete, how it translated to be an entrepreneur. You know, I saw a video the other day of one of the biggest real estate guys in South Florida. And he's like, he was an athlete at somewhere, I can't remember, but he's a big business guy now. He's just way, way more of a businessman than ever as an athlete. But he's like, I'm more of an athlete than ever. The details, I wake up earlier. I'm much more in shape. I care about the details way more. And it translates
Yeah.
because he said, not only are you competing with the people around you, you're competing with the entire economy. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
he's not wrong. And then when
Yeah.
I was like, wow, everything matters. You got systems, discipline, rest, like implementing it. It
Yeah.
matters. It matters. So
Yeah.
a lot is translated from the athletic world to the business world. So
Yeah. No, I feel like a lot of people have that same sentiment where they really appreciate their time in sport when it comes to running a business or starting a business or working in the corporate world because it really does give them that competitive edge and it makes them feel like, they have an understanding and self-awareness of what they can get done and their work ethic and their grit. It's really cool to hear you kind of, say the same thing. It's awesome. Now, you mentioned something interesting when you were talking about detaching from outcomes, right? Because I've had guests come on and I think there's a big, I guess, conversation on social media around like detaching from outcomes and almost that outcomes don't matter, which I agree with. You should be focusing on your process. And I think the process over the outcome, I think that's a no brainer. And I think a lot of people can agree on that, especially anyone in the mental performance sphere. But I think somewhere where I kind of get lost in this conversation, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it as well, is when people say outcomes don't matter, I think they do matter. And we've learned this in sport because I'm sure you've played with a lot of kids that might have been the hardest worker, might have grinded every chance they got, might have been in the weight room, might have done everything they needed to do, but who's starting? And I've played with plenty of kids, right? It's like the person that starts is going to be the person that produces, that has the outcomes that are desired by the coaching staff. And I think where I kind of view that and my perspective on all that is that might be true in that setting, in the sports setting. But again, if we're playing the long-term game, the process, that work ethic, that grit, that desire, that fire is what's going to take you to be successful in ventures outside of sport. But I think the idea of outcomes not mattering at all, I think isn't true. And I'd love to hear kind of your philosophy on that as well, because I think it's a topic that gets talked about a ton in this space.
outcomes certainly matter. You know, I want an athlete, especially in high school, like there's just feedback for now, right? Like if you're good enough, if you're a good enough athlete, the colleges will find you. They will find you. It's never the recruiting. It's never the coaches, right? And take 100% responsibility for everything in your life. It's
Right.
you. It
Right.
is you. You've had plenty of chances to impress coaches. Guys have come, you know, especially if you're in games against guys that are at that level, right? Camps, you've had your shot. So it's on you. The college level, they certainly matter. I mean, it's undoubted. It's like, no doubt, right? But the process gets you there. And falling in love with the process and building self-efficacy, I think is key. And which translates just to conviction.
Yeah.
Right. And I was thinking about this the other day. There was a kid who I have like that. He's a dog, super intense, assertive. He works really hard, but he always refers back to a kid from high school who's a little bit better than him and then didn't put in the work. I go, that kid has conviction in what he does. Right. And that's why there's some kids out there and it gets exposed in college just because of how, right. But
Of course.
through high school, you can get away with it if you have the conviction, right? And then when you get to college, you need the conviction and the work ethic, right? But there's not a lot of kids out there who just whatever they do, they're really good at, no matter like how much they put into it. And I never understood it either because I was that kid. I worked really hard. I did everything I needed to do for the most part. And then there was always that kid who didn't work very hard and just balled.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm
Right.
like, how?
Yeah.
Conviction. And that's what I try to teach now. Detaching. Very interesting. You don't tell a skier to not look at the trees. Tell them look at the white. And so what are you going to become attached to? That's the process. It's that simple. And then Langston mentioned inner excellence. The key to fulfillment is an unconditional love for the pursuit of self-mastery, constantly getting better. Kaizen, if you want to call it, right? That's how you detach. But you don't detach by thinking about detaching, right? The brain doesn't, then don't,
Right.
right? It's just going to filter out whatever comes through, right? So getting attached to the right things.
Yeah. No, I love the way that you put that with kind of what you're attaching yourself to is the idea of Kaizen, which is like trying to get better every single day and focusing on that process. It's attaching yourself to the process, not necessarily completely detaching away from outcomes. Now, this kind of translates into goal setting, right? Like, and I'm sure every client that you work with, I'm sure has their goals on what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. Now, we've talked about this on the podcast a ton about goal setting, and a belief that we kind of have here that we've had, my co-host and I, was like goal setting is kind of like set it and forget it to a certain extent. So when I say set it and forget it is let's set this. And then the most important part of that process of goal setting is going to be making your blueprint on how to get there. And what is the how to get there? It's the process. So I'd love to hear kind of how you guys approach goal setting, because I've heard it put in so many different ways. One of them that really stuck with me, and I forget where I heard it was, they said, like, if you're looking at marathon runners or you're looking at anyone that runs like a race, like everyone's goal is to finish that race, right? So it's not the person with the best goal that's going to win that race. It's the person with the best process, right? Because like I could go run a marathon and my goal is to finish the race and someone else could as well. But what's going to matter is the work that we put in up until that point, right? It's not going to say every day I'm going to say, oh, I really want to finish this race. That's my goal. I really want to finish this race. And then race day comes and I haven't done the necessary work in order to finish that race, right? Like I'd love to hear how you work on goal setting with your athletes and kind of what your philosophy is on that.
This is why conviction really matters. If I wanted to make $1 million next year and I did it on, let's say like March 1st, 2027, did it matter when I made the million? Did it? Like, no, it doesn't, right?
No.
You made the million,
Right.
right? And so I completely agree. Like you set the goal and you reverse engineer it. But this is also why like you have a long-term, like something that just seems super delusional. Like I said, $1 million, right? Like if people that know me, they get on there and be like, what the hell is Jacob talking about right now? Right. But no, seriously, like that's why being delusional matters. I don't believe in delusion. I think I only say you have to be delusional. That way I can get the point across. You know, delusion in that sense, no, humans are so capable of so many things.
Yeah.
You know, what you focus on expands. And I think not a lot of people realize that. So I totally agree. Like it sets the blueprint. If you're convicted in your process, if you're convicted in yourself and you know you're the creator of your life, it doesn't matter when you achieve that goal. It just doesn't, right? And it's never going to happen on said date, right? So, but it's also important, like in the business world, I saw a video of Alex Hormozy, for example. He was lecturing at an event for acquisition.com and somebody in the crowd had a $10 million business. He goes, I want to make 100 million by next year. And that's a huge goal, right? To 10x, especially at that level, right? Like I know what I'm talking about there. But he was like, if we just said 100 million in 10 years, you're going to get there a lot better than you would in a year. Make better decisions, right? So it's important to be delusional, but also give yourself time to develop into that person that is capable, that thinks, that believes, and that acts in that way as well. Because the growth is what's going to get you. The process is what's going to get you that result, not the result in of itself.
Yeah, no, I love that perspective on delusion. We actually just had a guest on. He's mental performance coach at BYU. So he works with like BYU athletics.
Awesome.
And when we were having the conversation with him, he was talking about delusion and how that has helped him go from, he was an Olympic level runner and pole vaulter, Olympic level pole vaulter, and then transitioned into this mental performance sphere. And what he has said was he was not a great student in high school, but as he went through school, he now has a doctorate in performance psychology or sports psychology. And he was saying that delusion of when I played my sport, or you don't even have to call it delusion, but the characteristics that I took away from that sport was like, all of the things that I learned have set me up to be able to be the best at anything that I could possibly do. which I love. And he talks about a lot of his athletes. He's like, my favorite athletes to work with are the ones that play football and are like, you know what? If I put the time and effort in, I could be a NBA basketball player. And they're like, there's that level of confidence because, again, the characteristics that you've taken away from your sport, the systems that you've put in place have shown you this proof that you can accomplish what you've kind of set out to accomplish. So I kind of love the way that you put that because I think it's so true.
Austin Reeves, I was scrolling.
Yeah.
And I saw him on a podcast or like a talk show, and he's like, all of us are crazy. Right.
Yeah.
All of us
Yeah.
believe we can go off for 40 any night. And I'm like, it requires that. Right. And then Nick posted this on a tweet as well the other day. He's like, 2 boxers walk into the ring with the same ability. One's doubtful, one's convicted. Who's going to win?
Right. The convicted one. Right.
Yeah. Right. So it's so important. When I hire too, when I look at people to bring in, hire for the soul, train for the role. Right.
Yeah.
If you show me you're hungry and you show me you can do it once you learn the process, I'd rather teach you, right? And then you can learn it along the way, right?
Yeah.
So it matters, like, the mindset, the conviction, right? The belief, it matters. It matters for sure, especially at the college level, it's required.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, everybody at the college level, we all have an ego, right?
Right.
Like,
Of course.
you had to have a little bit, we're using it in somewhat the right way, right?
Right.
So,
yeah, no, I completely agree about that too. There's a level of confidence that you need to have in order to excel, especially at the collegiate level. I mean, think about all the guys that you played with that probably had great collegiate careers. It's like the ones that you can imagine showed confidence in some way or another. They didn't play scared. They played free. And I think that's so important. And, that's kind of how we grow as humans as well, is being able to live free, our ability to play free, coach free, and do all of it free, right? Confident. But you mentioned that you were working with a baseball player. I know I'm going to take this back a little bit. You mentioned it about probably 5-10 minutes ago, but you mentioned you were working with a baseball player. Now, I'm sure you're working with athletes of different sports. Now, how do you as a coach kind of change your perspective and keep it the same when you're working with athletes of different sports? I've asked a couple of coaches who are kind of on the same mental performance journey as you, like what their approach is. And I'd love to hear yours as well, of working with athletes of all different sports.
yeah, I mean, I've worked with baseball, football, basketball, soccer, figure skating.
Yeah.
I think that's it. There's probably a couple more I can't think of. Lacrosse. I mean, it's a great question. I focus more on personal development at the end of the day. Like,
Yeah.
if a former athlete comes in, I'll teach them the exact same thing, right? It's just we're going to have different goals, right? And use breath work and meditation and visualization in a different manner, right? So I don't think the sport really matters.
Yeah.
For me, in my sense, and everybody has a different approach for it. But I've resonated with baseball players and basketball players very well. Football guys too. I worked with a quarterback, a Division III quarterback. We had like 3 calls, and his first one, nuts. After the first one, and then after the third one, he had beaten Aurora. They had been like the 6-time running conference champion, and nobody had beat him in between. And they went down 14-0 in the first quarter, and we talked about it on the interview that I did with him. I need to post that. And he was like, I just kept my calm.
Yeah.
And going back to Alomar, Coach Alomar was like, what is panic going to do here? Right? What is frustration going to do here? What is anger going to do here? Where we need to direct our energy. Where are you placing your energy? Right? And so I don't think the sport matters. It's a great question. I think sometimes I resonate with athletes better than others. No, I mean, I'd be curious to hear, like, do other coaches see, I guess, or have a different approach with different sports?
Yeah. The feedback that we've gotten on the podcast is kind of very similar to yours, is like, it might be different sport, but we're talking about very similar things. It's just kind of the verbiage. And I think the BYU coach, or the BYU mental performance coach, kind of shed a cool light on it by saying, I do want an understanding or background on the specific sport. He's like you working with an ice skater. He's like, I've never ice skated in my life, but I would like them on maybe the first couple sessions, like, explain to me what ice skating, like, what makes ice skating special to you, like, explain to me certain things, because just the verbiage that they want to use, right? Like, I'm sure if you're working with a football player, you can chop it up and you understand every slang and lingo when they're talking about, football. Same with me with baseball and pitchers, right? It's like, I understand everything that they're talking about lingo wise, but you might go into another sport and it's not necessarily that the lessons you're teaching get different. It's just the conversation then flows a little bit smoother because you're not saying like, hold on, what was that again? I don't know exactly what that was. Like, it's going in there with an open mind of like, I kind of want to learn about the sport a little bit more. And it kind of, it shows you care as well. It's like, all right, I'm interested in that sport, and it's kind of cool to learn. So that was just some of the feedback, but most of it at the core of coaching and what it is, it does stay the same. And it's all about, like you said, personal development, because at the end of the day, you're coaching for a long-term game, not this short-term game of just when they're playing their sport. So no, it definitely is aligned with kind of your way of thinking. So that's awesome.
Nick, he doesn't believe in self-image or self-worth.
Okay.
To get on that level, I had to sit there for a minute when he said it the one day he said it, and I go, what?
Yeah.
So like when I hear personal development now, I'm like, it assumes that you're not in a great spot, that
Yeah.
you haven't done the
True.
right things, that you haven't taken the right action. It's arbitrary. It's very broad. It's certainly interesting. And then going back, like I worked with a karate fighter as well. So
Yeah.
I had to learn.
Yeah.
He sent me
Yeah.
a bunch of videos. I had to watch them all. I was like, wow, it's pretty cool.
Right.
And then teaching him visualization and stuff. So the lingo is certainly important, like you said. So I totally agree. It's like we're teaching a way of life at the end of the day, right? How you do one thing's how you do everything. I want you to be present in every single phase of life. I don't care if you're playing the Super Bowl tomorrow, right? What can you do now to enhance your performance for the Super Bowl, right? If you want to think ahead. Right?
Yeah. No. And, I've thought about this too, because, working with pitchers, like a big thing everyone talks about is your pre-pitch routine, right? So you're on the mound, you get the ball, like what are some things that you can incorporate? Like you want something physical, something mental that you can incorporate, maybe something you could speak to yourself, verbalize it a little bit. And that translates to other sports just in different ways. It's just not called a pre-pitch routine, right? Like when you were a long snapper, I'm sure you kind of had some sort of routine that you wanted to do before each time you snapped the ball.
Same thing every single time. And I interrupted
Exactly.
you for a reason, to the emphasis.
Yeah.
And the one bad snap I had, I didn't get to do it because we were in a rush.
Oh.
It matters. It certainly does.
Yeah.
I've had an athlete use a go song.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
tell him he can only listen to it when he needs it.
Yeah.
You don't listen to it for fun. You use it like it's a weapon, right? And it puts you in the state. And I had him visualize with it over and over and over again to put him in that state. Because our body, it detects a song and it wants you to it puts you in that emotional state. I was on a call with Nick's group a couple of weeks ago, and there was a guy, he was taking a left turn. This was 20, 30 years ago. And he got just smashed, right? Like cars T-bone from the left side, like really weird, whatever happened. But he's like, every time I took a left turn for 10 or 20 years, it was just like the body was familiar with it.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the same thing with a routine. When our body, whether it's a song, a routine, a mantra, it puts you in that state. And so it's real,
I love
Especially when you know it's real too. But it's also like, how can you detach from it and not be like, have a situation where I had, right?
where you need. Yeah. No, I've heard someone on Instagram kind of phrase it like this. It's like your routine should be something that helps you. It shouldn't be something that takes away anything from you. Like you said, you should be free flowing with your routine, as in like, this is just something I do. This is what happens, but don't be a slave to the routine where if you can't do it, then you're done, right? Like then it's a thought in your head that you can't get rid of. It's like, oh, I can't do this. Oh my God. Like I couldn't get my routine through. And I think like you're talking about, muscle memory. I love the idea of using, you called it a go song, right? That's what you call it. I love that. I think I'm going to utilize that. I've used that with songs, even, thinking about my playing career, there are songs that, definitely hit a little closer to home when I'm getting ready for like a start as a pitcher or getting ready to play. I've never referred to it as a go song, but I'm definitely going to use that. That's awesome. And I think that definitely is beneficial and helps a ton.
100%. And also, like when you use it, you have to think about charging up. You have to think about your nervous system gaining energy instead of the adrenaline rush. It's very interesting. It's all science to it. But like my best football year, like across the board, was probably my freshman year of high school. I had a huge leap from 8th to 9th grade.
Yeah.
I earned my first Division I offer. I played varsity in 8th grade. And I played varsity all the way through. I was at a smaller school.
Yeah.
But I listened to the same 2 songs before every game. I don't know why I changed after that. If I just forgot. But yeah, going back to the routine a little bit. There was at one point where I debated about teaching athletes, like, I don't care about your routine. I just want to give you a set of tools that you know how to use. But then it was like, okay, they need the routine. They're younger, right?
Yeah.
But it's also like the way of life as well. It's like you have to use those tools from a certain state. If you use them from shame, if you use them from fear, right? Well, that could be as effective. Right. And so acceptance, right? Not judging anything, nothing inherently is good or bad. It's a good way to look at it too, right? Nick likes to say good hype and bad hype are both bad, right? One serves the ego, makes it more fragile, and then the other one cracks it, right?
Right.
So tools. Yeah. I mean, the routine is key. And like, I had a morning routine,
Yeah.
earlier in the year, but like now I just do what I want,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, and then like Hormozy too. I like him a lot. He's kind of like a sociopath.
Yeah.
He gets what he
Yeah.
wants, right? Because he does the
Right.
work, but he was commenting on a response to him because he does a lot of interaction with his
Yeah.
followers and fans. And the guy was like, and the comment was, "Make your bed, make millions." And he goes, "Get out of here."
He
He's like, "I
Yeah.
just woke up and went to work." Right. So like if that's the feeling I have, I'm not gonna go through some hour elaborate routine just to put me in a state which I'm already in.
Right.
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 So
Yeah.
I like not being a slave to the routine. There's
Yeah.
definitely some athletes I've had that are type A, and I'm like, well, what's gonna happen when X comes along,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I'll challenge them to get out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I was a pitcher, and I think in high school, what you learned quick, which I am grateful for, like, I didn't play at like a huge high school, and we're from New Jersey, so, we're up in the cold a little bit, but like we're traveling, and then, if you're starting that day, maybe at your home games you have like an hour to warm up and get ready, but then on your away games, because you're traveling, you have like 30 minutes. So you have to make that routine pretty flexible, because if you're concrete on it, then, what happens when I lose 30 minutes? I'm going to be toast, right? I'm not going to be ready or prepared. But if you have some staples in your routine that you can incorporate, and just like, okay, you know what? Not that I need to hit these things, but just, I hit these things in warm up and I'm good to go. Like something that's quick and easy, I feel like you can utilize anywhere at any time. That's when you get into success. Because again, like you can go to the far extreme, and then when things aren't in a perfect condition, then again, we're not creating the athletes that we want to create anyway, right? Like if we can only perform under the perfect conditions, that's not a resilient athlete by any means. You need to be able to have some sort of flexibility, and adaptability is one of the best tools that you can have as an athlete.
It helps with the way of life as well. How you do one thing is how you do everything. I think that's the
Right.
third time I've said it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you're present in every moment, you're going to perform to the best of your ability, right? And like I said, I have an inside joke about systems and routines because when I was on this like tools run, I was like, you just need tools, right? The routine's cool, but if you have a set of tools that work and how to get you in that state of performance or presence, right? I was like, you just need systems. And he's like, you need routines. So if you look through all of our content, I think on both podcasts, we joke about it,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm for either, right? Whatever's going to work for you, but be very flexible. I want you to be able to show up, not warm up and ball,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's a way of life.
Yeah. And it goes back to the conviction as well. Like you mentioned, I mean, it all works together, right? It's all congruent and all flows together. But Jacob, I think this is a perfect time to jump into our Fast Five segment. So we got 5 semi-rapid fire questions. I alluded it to you earlier, all on mental performance and sports. So whenever you're ready, I'll throw them at you and then we'll go from there.
All right, let's do it.
Cool. Awesome. All right, let's go. Question number 1 is, what part of your identity did sports help you discover?
You gave me the question, and it's still resilience.
Yeah.
Resilience. I
Yeah.
say it's number 1.
I love it. All right. Number 2, looking back, what moment felt like the end for you, but just ended up being a new beginning?
What moment felt like the end and then ended up being a new beginning? I would say, losing football is like the cliche answer here, right?
Right.
Losing
Yeah.
Stanford,
Yeah.
that seizure moment,
Yeah.
that was tough. Waking up, I went unconscious, and waking up from that, I knew it was over,
Yeah.
right? So that's probably the end. It was a new beginning for sure.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. And then number 3, when everything around you is chaotic, what's one habit that brings you back to center?
Being present in my body, right? Putting my focus on one thing.
Yeah.
You focus on your body, nothing around you can distract you. Where are you placing your energy, right? It's most important.
Love that. Number 4, what belief about yourself did you have to unlearn in order to grow as an athlete or a person?
Belief that I have to unlearn as an athlete. That I can do anything. Even
Yeah.
at Stanford, like, I had a lot of doubt. Almost like the doubt doubled when I got there, that I can do anything. That it was kinda like earlier about what the BYU coach said about the football players and going to play basketball, going to play in the NBA. I can do it, right?
Yeah.
It's not what I wanna do, but I could do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that I can do anything.
I love that. And then last question, number 5, what does success feel like to you now? And how has that changed since you were an athlete?
Success to me feels like now when I wake up to athletes and their texts. Like, that's my joy, right? All the money in the world couldn't replace that joy. Versus an athlete, a good game, the results.
Yeah, right. Of course.
The results, getting into Stanford, having the best games of my career, starting, playing. I snapped a record field goal at Stanford. That was pretty cool, right?
Yeah,
But in a
that's pretty
loss.
cool. Yeah.
But the results, of course, as an
Yeah,
athlete.
of course. Yeah. No, I feel like all athletes are the same in that sphere. When you're younger, that's, results are flashy. That's what everyone likes to kind of reflect on during that time period. So I appreciate you sharing your journey with us and taking the time to chat with us on all things mental performance. I mean, your journey is really unique and special, and really happy you were able to be vulnerable and expose kind of all of those things that you went through along your way, and kind of how that's transitioned into how you coach now, and talking about a lot of those topics on mental performance. And really appreciate you taking the time and being so open to, converse about all of that. So really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.
Course, yeah. Really enjoyed it. And then Jacob, you can drop your social media and everything where everyone can find you, just so, if any of the listeners want to tune in and check out all your other content or work with any of your services, that'd be great.
Should be at JLowe, JLOWE, transforms, no underscores, no periods. It should be on all platforms as well.
Awesome. Perfect. Great. All right, Jacob. Thank you so much again, and really appreciate this episode, man. It was an awesome conversation.
Thank you.